Hillary Bryant. I'm the Donor Services Director here at the Community Foundation, and I'm here with Sam, my colleague.
And I'm Sam Lees, the Director of Philanthropic Services here at the Foundation.
And we're so glad that you can join us today for learning a little bit more about donor advised funds. And before we start really getting into donor advised funds, I know many of you are new to the foundation. Perhaps are very generous donors to either a fire or COVID fund, and we wanted to introduce the foundation to you. So just briefly, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Community Foundation, and then we'll get into the program and discuss donor advised funds. So we're here today to talk about donor advised funds, but I'm going to talk to you a bit about Community Foundation Santa Cruz County. And we really like to think of this as your community foundation. We are really come together because of your hopes and dreams and the dreams that we all have for our community. Our mission is really quite joyful. I love our mission. We bring together people, ideas, and resources to inspire philanthropy and accomplish great things. And sometimes those great things are building a soccer field, and other times those great things are helping our community manage a global pandemic. We never know what's going to happen day to day, but we're here to work with all of you, and really we're here because of all of you. And our vision is to make Santa Cruz County thrive for all who call it home, both now and in the future. So we're unique in the nonprofit world in the sense that we think a lot about what's happening in our county immediately, but we're always planning for the future, and we're doing that because of you and with you. And we say we've been thinking about the future since 1982. Many of you were probably here and remember the floods of 1982. 25 inches of rain came down. It was absolutely devastating for our community. There's a picture of the San Lorenzo River. The Pajaro River also flooded. It was just a terrible, terrible time. And our community really came together. And much like we've been doing in this past year, neighbors helping neighbors. There were no boundaries of I'm the city, I'm the county. We really came together and said, how can we help each other? We can't wait for the feds to come in. We can't wait for the state to save us. We have to work together to help ourselves. And the community came together and collaboratively decided that some community leaders said we need a community foundation. And so they came together, and we've been working ever since, not just to solve the work in the disasters, but to work in the good times as well. But talking about last year was really a year like no other. And part of the work that we did was so much in thanks and appreciation for all of you. We were impactful in the sense that $22 million in grants and scholarships went out to our community from many donors just like you. That's $10 million more than we've done in years past. So that was a watermark year for us, really. We also did quite a bit of unique loans, something that's unique to the Community Foundation. We did about $6 million in our low interest loans. These are sort of our impact investing. They sit between what we think of as a traditional loan and then just a grant out where we don't expect any repayment. These are very low interest loans, and we really focus those loans on economic development and affordable housing. Think of like a Habitat for Humanity project where we just need a little bit of extra to get them across the finish line. So we're very proud of that, and it's something unique to the Community Foundation. And then trust is everything to us. We have trusted partners. We want you to trust us. We trust the community. And with that trust, you've all entrusted us with $148 million in overall charitable assets. Some of those are things like our donor advised funds. We have about 160 donor advised funds. And then we also have about 230 endowed funds in our portfolio. And with all this, we're here to put your generosity to work. We're here to help you give to your passion, support effective nonprofits, because there are so many incredible nonprofits doing amazing work across our county, and to create a lasting impact. And that's why we're here. So that's a little bit about the foundation and an introduction to us. So we're going to go into talking about donor advised funds. But before we do that, we just wanted to show you a real brief video just to give you an idea of some of the donors that are part of the foundation and some of the great, incredible financial advisors we work with here locally.
I grew up in a family of 10, my parents and 8 children. We lived on a farm.
We started working young and planning for the future, even as kids. I started a company when I was 25 years old, which turned out to be very successful. We've had as many as 300 employees, and we have 3 factories. It's now 100% employee owned. Having our 4 children grow up here, we've been intimately involved in the community, and it's our home. We want to help at home. So our goal has been to share what we don't need to live on with others, and that money we give to the community foundation.
I like to think of a donor advised fund as a charitable giving account. I have a retirement account, I have a checking account, and I have a donor advised fund here that I think of as my charitable giving account. I put funds in when I need the tax advantage, but I can give them to nonprofits I care about at any time.
They're a very flexible tool that accountants advise their clients to use. Your ability to bunch your charitable giving in a year when maybe you have a high income year, you sold a piece of property, so you can take advantage of a big lump of giving in that year. You can give the proceeds to charity. On the investment side, the administration side, they make it seamless and very easy. You can set up a donor advised fund in a day.
You can choose where it goes after the fact when you're ready to give. You can be anonymous, or you can let the charity know that you're the one giving. When we make a request for a donation, it happens within a day or 2. And we find out when that happens. Their communication's great.
If we need something, we just ask and we get it.
I reviewed our statement from last year this morning, and the investments made about 10%, and the fee for managing our fund was about 1%.
When clients are fortunate enough to find themselves in a position where they have the means to be philanthropic and the desire, they often don't know what to do next or don't know how to direct their giving. They don't always have a particular charity in mind. They often have an area of interest. A donor advised fund allows and affords them the opportunity to direct those assets, appreciated assets with a tax advantage, to many charities potentially. It's very special also that those particular donor advised funds are not established through an 800 number, and that the organization that is sponsoring those funds and administering them and guiding them is very much involved in the community in which people live.
As the year goes along, we look for needs in the community, and we do go to Susan for advice on where the needs are, because she's more in touch with the whole community than we are. So we have our favorite charities, CASA, St. Vincent de Paul, Neighbors, our churches that we attend, and then we get guidance from Susan about other donations to make.
Well, the Community Foundation is the hub in Santa Cruz County of information on places where your money can best serve the community. So if you don't have complete knowledge of where you want to give, but have a desire to serve this community, the Community Foundation understands where those funds can be best used to have the biggest outcome.
There's so many areas of need, so many different things that we can turn our attention to, but I think the focus needs to be one educated by an organization like the foundation. And the donor advised funds and the way that you educate people, I don't think is matched by any other service or organization I'm aware of.
When someone has a donor advised fund with the Community Foundation, they are interacting with people who love this community like they do, who want to learn more about the community, who are committed to this community, who see that generosity in action here can truly make a difference.
Santa Cruz County is of a size that when I give to this community, I feel like it has impact.
Even if it's just changing one person's life, like St. Vincent de Paul, when they help somebody with rent or with fixing their car, or whatever it is that we do, you get to see that you're making a difference and that people's lives are better.
thank you for listening to some of our donors and some of our professional advisors talk a little bit about donor advised funds from their perspective. I'm going to switch and talk a little bit more about how they work, how they might work for you. After that, we have questions. We'll have plenty of time for questions that any of you might have. So we'll begin this now. Donor advised funds, as our CEO Susan True said in the video, are she considers to be a charitable checking account, a giving account, and she's right. It's a tax-wise way to give. It's easy and fast to set up, and it allows various levels of anonymity. The process is pretty simple. You give to we establish a fund, you make a gift to it, you receive a tax deduction at that time. Unlike some organizations, we're able to accept a wide variety of assets, not just cash or stock, but other appreciated properties, real estate. We are now able to accept cryptocurrency, not to hold as an investment, but to use to sell and fund your donor advised fund, appreciated stock, and that can be publicly traded stock, that can be privately held stock. We can do lots with various assets to turn them into charitable assets for you. The minimum to establish a donor advised fund here is $25,000. So when the $25,000 comes to us, we will invest it in one of our 4 investment pools. It's your choice which one of those 4 you would like to have your funds in. And over time, those have, for our long-term funds, those have grown. We can't guarantee that, but they generally do as well. And that growth, by the way, happens inside your fund at a public charity, namely the community foundation. And so the growth is tax-free to you. And one of the most important part of all of this is the last part, which is grants. And that's what we call gifts that you request from your fund to go to various nonprofits. And those can go to any nonprofit public charity in the United States. It does not have to be just in Santa Cruz County. So that we make grants on behalf of our donor advised funds to their colleges in Texas, to national medical or health research organizations that are based elsewhere. We also make grants to local churches and temples, to school districts, in some cases to governmental units, hospitals. All of those are qualified public charities. Tax-wise, why is this helpful? Well, for a number of reasons. Gifts to donor advised funds take advantage of the most generous deduction provisions that the Internal Revenue Code provides. You receive an immediate tax deduction for any gift you make to the community foundation. That tax deduction can be used if it's large and it exceeds the limitation that the IRS places on you for annual deductions. The excess can be carried over for up to 5 additional years. And this is also something that is very useful to people who want to bunch their charitable deductions. They may give away $10,000 a year normally. And so their accountant sees that they have some assets that they're not needing to live on right now and says, why don't you pre-fund your charitable giving for the next 3 years by putting $30,000 into a donor advised fund? If they accept that advice, they then get to do that. And that gift is going to bring their annual deductions above the new increased standard deduction amount, giving them excess, or not excess, but giving them additional tax deductions. In the following years, they would then use the standard deduction while they make grants out to the organizations that they wish. I mentioned before giving appreciated property, and this is whether you're talking about us or you're talking about any charity. Giving appreciated property is by far the most tax efficient way to go. That can be stock, mutual funds, real estate. Your deduction is based on the current market value of the assets you contribute, not what you paid for them. So you not only avoid the capital gains tax, but you get a deduction based upon current value. You bypass paying federal capital gains taxes and also state income taxes on the appreciated portion of the gift. And as I mentioned before, because your charitable assets are under our nonprofit umbrella, they grow tax-free in your chosen investment pool. And now we get to the fun part, giving it away. We try to make this very simple. And according to some of the people in the video, it looks like we've succeeded in that. It's easy. You get one tax receipt at the time of your gift. You get quarterly statements from us that show the gifts that you have made and also all the grants that have gone out from your fund. We handle all the paperwork. Due diligence is something that's very important. We make sure that the organizations that you are granting to are qualified tax deductible recipients in good standing with the IRS. We do that for every grant we make. And lastly, we make the payments, which used to be checks. Now, very often they're electronic deposits directly to your nonprofit's bank account. The donor advised fund allows you to give whenever you want to give. It also excuse me, it also allows you to add to it anytime you wish. And so a large gift this year may not be granted out until next year or the year after, but you get the tax deduction when you give it, and you have those funds available to flow through to your beneficiaries later on. And again, you can make grants to any qualified public charity in the United States. International grants can be done. If you have questions about that, I'll be happy to answer them later. It's not an area that most of our donors are involved in, but we are able to do that also. And this is probably the most important, one of the most important advantages of a donor advised fund with us. And that is, we know Santa Cruz County. I'm a 5th generation resident. We've been in business for 40 years here. We have people who have been deeply involved in the community, both on our board as our donors and on our staff. And they bring to you collective knowledge that's extraordinary about community issues and about local nonprofits who are doing good work and in whom we have faith. That information is absolutely available for you. Many people don't need it. They already know who they want to make their gifts to. That's fine. But should you wish to know anything about that, we would be absolutely pleased to work with you on that. And if you have ideas about, if you want to hear some new areas that may need your assistance, we can provide that too. So it's pretty easy. What do you need to do if you want to do this? Well, you need to name your fund. And the reason that's up here is because one of the things that donor advised funds offer is that a level of anonymity that you can choose grant by grant. If you, and the default usually is a gift from the blank fund at Community Foundation. Well, if you really want to be anonymous, you probably don't want to have your fund called the Jones Family Giving Fund. You may choose, and you may want another name that essentially hides your identity. You You can have almost any name you want. There are a few that are already taken here that you can't have. The Emerging Jedi Fund is one of them. The Blue Star Fund is another. But those names really hide who the gift is coming from. And some people like that. Second thing is determine the amount of your establishing gift. It needs to be at least $25,000, but it can be any amount above that. You choose one of our 4 investment pools in which you'd like your funds invested. And you decide who the advisor is going to be, which is usually the donor to begin with. Sometimes it's a donor and some children or a spouse or friends. And you also have the option, if you wish, of naming a successor advisor after you're gone. As I've said before, lots of assets can be accepted, lots of different assets, cash, appreciated property, and so on. I've opened donor advised funds with shares of stock in Pasatiempo Golf Club, in partial interests of real property that's going to be sold. There's all sorts of things all sorts of assets that can be turned to charitable uses if you know how to do it. And we make it our business to try to know how to do it and help you with that. Gifts of cash that you make in 2021 are tax deductible, and this is only for 2021, up to 100% of your adjusted gross income, after taking into account some other contribution limits. So if you're thinking about doing this, we can talk about it, but this is absolutely something you need to check with your tax advisor on to make sure it works for you. And while it does take $25,000 to open a donor advised fund, there's no required minimum balance after that. So as you make grants, you are not required to fill it up again. Often people do, but that's not something that is needed. And with that, we can look at this lovely slide of Ivy and the areas to give. The areas that are listed are areas in which we maintain, the foundation maintains funds that support grants in these areas. In addition, individuals have established funds that support fields of interest. They support other funds support specific organizations, so that the earnings from those funds go to them annually. But the greatest and most frequent use of donor advised funds is direct grants for annual gifts to the charities that you support. And again, that can be anyone in the United States. So these are the ways that we have helped about 160 people so far. Well, actually more than that, because some of them are no longer with us. But currently we have about 160 donor advised funds established. And we hope that we're able to open more if they are in your best interests. So with that, I thank you.
With that, thanks, Sam. We do have some questions that came in to us in advance of the presentation. We also are here to and happy to answer any questions that might have come up. Again, we try to make this process really simple. We're here today to answer your questions, and you can feel free to email us or call us anytime. One of the questions that came up, Sam, is there a minimum grant amount to make?
Yes, thank you. There is. The minimum grant that we require, grant request is $250. So we will make a grant for $250 or any amount above that.
And how do we make a grant from a donor advised fund?
We have a number of ways you can do that. Our donor advisors are able to access their donor advised fund on an online portal through our website, which will show them at any one time what their available balance is, what their most recent gifts into the fund have been, and what grants they've recommended out, and also where those grants are in our process. So you can do it online if you're comfortable with that. You can send us an email to a specific address that is for grant recommendations. And particularly early on in your experience with us, call us and we'll walk you through the process. But we have lots of ways for you to tell us how you want a grant to be made. Once you've requested that grant, we make sure that the organization is an eligible recipient of tax deductible funds. And we will then send the money on its way. That used to be through checks. Now it's largely through electronic deposits. And while we say most gifts go out between 3 and 7 days, many gifts go out in 1 or 2. And the longer periods are for new recipient organizations where we need information from them perhaps, but generally grants go out right away.
Great, so $250 minimum grant, and we really do try to make it quite simple. Like I said, Sam said, you can do it online through the portal. You don't have to talk to any of us, but if you want to, we're here and we're here to help. I think we just had a question in the chat. What fees do we charge for a donor advised fund?
What a good question, and I'm sorry I didn't mention it. Our fee for a donor advised fund, our annual fee is 1.5% of the average fund balance. And that is charged at 1/12 that rate every month at the end of the month. At the end of each month, any investment earnings or losses are also posted to your account. The 1.5% fee applies to all donor advised funds up to a balance of $1 million. Above $1 million, the fees begin to drop percentage-wise. And those rates are in your would be in your donor advised fund agreement.
And Sam, could you share a bit more? Another question just came through about the 4 different investment pools and those choices.
Sure. The 4 pools that we maintain, starting from the least volatile, most conservative, we have what's called a capital preservation pool, which is very similar to a money market fund. It is not a money market fund, but it's designed so it doesn't make any money and it doesn't lose any money. And for some donors who have a specific gift that they want to make, particularly if it's a large portion of their fund within a relatively short period, they may in fact make that the selection of the capital preservation fund in order to be sure those dollars are there when their organization needs it. Next level up is something called a short duration fixed income pool. This pool is made up of bonds and both government and high-grade corporate bonds that are have an average duration of less than 3 years, and their maximum duration could be no more than 5. This pool generally makes a little money, 2 to 3% a year typically, and it doesn't lose, has not lost money, with the exception of 1 year in the last 22, when it lost 0.8%. So fairly conservative also. Most of our donor advised fund holders choose to put their money in one of our 2 long-term investment pool options. One of those is we call socially responsible long-term pool. Investments are screened both to winnow out bad industries, tobacco, gun manufacturing, nuclear arms, that sort of thing. And also that promote the inclusion of companies that have positive environmental, social, or governance policies and actions. And the last and oldest of our long-term funds is we call it the long-term pool. It's unrestricted. It can be invested in anything that our investment managers choose to. There are no screens one way or another. That is right now our largest individual pool. However, more and more people are choosing to invest in the socially responsible fund, or in some cases are switching from the unrestricted to the socially responsible fund.
Another question I want to make sure we get to, Sam, because it came in right before the program started, was I recently sold a property and want to know if I can avoid paying capital gains if I donate the net income to a donor advised fund.
I wish I had better news for you here. The answer is no. And this is why when we were talking about assets that we accept, I said appreciated stocks and bonds, or appreciated property, including real estate. Here's what happens if you have sold a piece of property. It's too hard to do numbers. If you sold a piece of property for more than you paid for it and what you've invested in it, you are going to recognize a capital gain on the proceeds of that sale. And that capital gain is going to be taxable by the federal government, usually at 15%, sometimes at 20%, very occasionally at 24%. And by the state of California, which doesn't have a separate capital gains rate. So it's an ordinary income tax in California, which can be as high as 12.6%. But in the example that you asked about, you've already made the sale, so you've already incurred the capital gain. However, you can offset the tax due on the capital gain to a considerable extent by making a gift of some of the proceeds to a charity. And I can help you run some numbers and figure that out if you'd like. What I wish it had happened is that you'd called me and said, I've got this property I want to sell, but I want to devote some of the proceeds to charity. Because in that case, we might have been able to work out a situation where perhaps you made, before you listed the property and before it was sold, you made a gift of 10 or 15% of it, undivided interest in the property, to the community foundation. And then there'd then be two owners of the property, the community foundation and you. Those two owners would list the property. We would hopefully sell it. And then when the proceeds arrived, they would be distributed 90% to you, 10% to the community foundation. In that case, you would have avoided all capital gains taxes on the 10% you gave to the community foundation, and you would have had a tax deduction for that gift. If you'd chosen to give the entire property to the community foundation before it was listed or sold, the entire amount would have been exempt from capital gains taxes. So there's some real advantages available here, but it's very important that you plan ahead and confer with someone who knows about charitable giving. You have my phone number, and your tax advisor, because these can be very complicated, although the principles are pretty simple. So I may have gone on too long with that.
Well, and the point of it, we're really here to help. We're available. Call us, call the foundation, call our cell phones, email us. We're happy to answer any questions. We've got another one. In addition to the 1.5% fee charge, does the donor also pay yearly management fees to the institutions that manage the mutual funds?
The donor doesn't pay, although the costs are passed through to the donor. The foundation pays. And the costs, our investment costs vary depending upon the pool in which you are invested in. They are now running at about 45/100% for the socially responsible fund, and just under 0.6% for the unrestricted long-term fund. So that's in investment speak, that's 45 to 60 basis points. Those charges are deducted from the gross returns that the foundation gets before the net returns are allocated to your fund. So yes, you indirectly do pay between 0.45 and 0.60% of investment fees, which are pretty low compared to many investment houses.
One thing we should mention, on our website, you can find information about our fees, about our investment pools. We also want to mention that again, many of you were very generous in donating to fire COVID funds over the past year. All the information about the grants out that we make are on our website, and we update that regularly, and we continue to make grants out to those organizations. So we want to make sure that you can find that information there. We also want to mention there are some benefits to being exclusive benefits to being a donor and working with a community foundation. Part of what Sam has mentioned is we really do try to make as much information about the incredible nonprofits in our community available to you. One of the things that we're doing for our donor advisors next month at the end of May is having an event sort of similar to this, but really talking about the incredible nonprofits and the work that they're doing. And we have, I think Stacy may be able to share with you, we have impact profiles about all of the different nonprofits that we work with, our trusted partners, and really allowing our donors to dig in about what the work they're doing, what efforts they're focused on right now, their budgets, and where their funding is going. And I can't begin to, you saw some of the photos and video, and in the video, and we have just fantastic nonprofit partners doing very important work. And really it's the issues that we care about, and you can focus on parts of the county, areas of concern, areas of interest, everything from education to the watershed to folklorico dance. So there is a wide variety, and we'll be talking more about this in our donor event at the end of May. So again, we try to really personalize our relationships with our donors, and we're here to work with you. And like we've said time and time again in this, we're here, pick up the phone, call us. That's what we love to do.
Yes, I'm with a new nonprofit, and we want to get listed on your site as a potential donor or grant recipient. How would we go about doing that? Hi.
Yeah, we're happy to help. We can connect after, but basically any nonprofit can go to our nonprofit page and click grant opportunities. And if they want to fill out one of these one-page impact profiles, we definitely encourage that. We even help edit it and kind of polish it up so that it's ready for donor advisors to take a look.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. And thank you, Merck. We really, that's part of what we get so excited about, is learning about the new nonprofits and the work that they're doing in the community and being able to share that. So that was a great question. Glad we were able to get that answered on the fly. Any other questions?
Yes. The fee is the combined total, depending upon your choice, is closer to 2%. And however, the range of investments in which you can participate is typically broader than you would get from a commercial donor advised fund provider. And perhaps the most important thing is that our fee, our administrative fee, the 1.5% fee, is what pays for the community foundation. That our ability to offer these funds, our ability to provide technical and financial assistance to our nonprofit community comes from our funds, our fund fees. So some people have said, okay, yes, it is higher than it might be at Vanguard, but it is going to the community. And in fact, some people have considered it an additional contribution to the community foundation. But in terms of out of pocket, yes, that is true. And if you are not interested in tapping local knowledge, Vanguard is great. You can go onto their website and type in the tax ID number and the name and all of that, and they will make grants for you. What they won't do is tell you who's doing what good work, or what are the organizations involved in something you're interested in, like local organizations interested in perhaps at-risk youth. That's not something that commercial providers are able to do.
We often think our donors tell us that the fees become like another donation, another contribution to the work of the community foundation, but also to our community. One of the other questions we just had in the chat was, do I have to maintain a minimum balance after the initial gift? And Sam is shaking his head. The
No.
answer is no.
No, not at all. We do require that there be activity in the donor advised fund, that if you haven't made a grant within the last 2 calendar years, we're going to contact you and say, what's up? We'd like you to make some grants. We don't park money here. Other than that, though, we don't bother you. We let you do whatever you'd like there.
We try not to bother you, but we're here for you. I think that unless there's any other questions, and again, feel free to stay on afterwards. We'll be here. So we're here if you want to jump off the call now, we just wanted to first thank you so very much for your time. We are really appreciative of you spending your lunchtime with us. And we're grateful again to so many of you who I know have given of your time and your finances this past year to help our community. The donations that you have given to both our fire and COVID funds have really, really made a difference. And we are all of us here on the call and at the foundation are tremendously grateful and really proud to live in a community like this where we can help one another. So thank you for that.